Alright, hi everyone. This is another time again for us to discuss something very peculiar and important in the shoemaking industry, especially when you're dealing with either a large scale production or a medium scale production, or perhaps your own personal production. It's very important to know these processes that are involved in shoemaking. So, the stages in footwear production, as we mentioned some days back, we talk about the design, we talk about pattern cutting, the cutting itself, that's clicking, then closing and assembling, closing and assembly, talk about lacing and making. After lacing and making, we look at finishing and also the shoe, which could be either combined together or put together. So we're starting with the first one, which is key, and I look at it as the most important aspect in shoemaking. That is the design. When I say design, what do I mean by the word design? What do we mean by the word design? So, what do we mean by the word design? Design plays a very important role. For an instance, before an architect starts a building, the first thing he needs to do is draw out a plan. Where does the architect start with that plan? It has to do on the land that was produced or provided rather. So, first thing he'll do is to take the measurement of the land, then look at a befitting design that will fit that land, because design is very key. So design will be used that will fit the land and the materials and the resources that will be used to build the building. You cannot start the building from the roof. You must start from the land. That is where the foundation will be. Then the building will take up before going to the final building, that is the roofing. So you don't start a building from the roof. That is also design. Design plays a very important role. Likewise in shoemaking. So what is design in shoemaking, or what is design in footwear? Design in footwear. Design is the total specification of the shoe products. The total specification of the shoe product, and this includes what? The upper, the style, the last, the sole, the heels, the colors. It could be the choice of material, and also the method of construction. These are the key elements that make up a design. Specification. What do we mean by total specification? Everything about the shoe. For example, I have this half cover here, or a mule here. What is referred to as design here is what? This upper should be a half cover. The lining is very important. We have to know the lining. That's the material, the upper material that will be used. The style of the shoe, as I said, is a half cover, but it's not a full shoe. That is the style. We talk about the last, the shape of the shoe. That's the last that will be used to get this very shape. If I should use a different shape, it will not give me the result I wanted. We talk about the colors. For example, this is black. Perhaps the designer is working on a color that is different. So, the choice of material that will be used for the shoe is also something you consider. Talk about the sole. This is a sole that has a heel. If I should end up using a sole that is flat, I've tampered to the design. The total specification of the word of the shoe article and the method of construction. I will explain more further on these very key points on design. Now let's look at the key principles of footwear design. The key principle that you need to consider in design, number one, is comfort. If we look at the definition of footwear, we say a prevention from injuries or any harsh substance. A person needs to wear his footwear for the sake of the comfort. Consider the factor like the fitting, the cushioning, the support that it gives on the foot. Not as a result of wearing a shoe, and it's aching you on your feet. You see, the comfort aspect is what has been taken out. Another principle, key principle we look at in the footwear making is functionality. Functionality. You remember the instance about the footwear that it helps in what performing some abnormal tasks. What are these functionality? They are designed for specific activities or specific purpose. Example is what? The running shoe. An athlete can have different kind of running shoes, even though he's an athlete, a runner, because not every runner run every kind of race. The first one is maybe the runner runs marathon, which has to do with a long distance. He will need a pair of sneakers to run the long distance. If he's a runner that runs 100 meters, like Usain Bolt, maybe what he needs is just a spike shoes that has some studs at the bottom, tiny studs. You see, the function of the footwear and the design, they differ in shape, even though they are both runners. Or let's say a boot that has to do with a safety, that's a safety boot for an oil company, will be different for a combat boot that has to do with the army or the military personnel. Design play a very, very important role, which is the functionality. And the third one here is what? Aesthetic. When we talk about aesthetic, we're talking about the balance in style, we're talking about the color, we're talking about the visual appealing. Every product you make have to be visually appealing to the person that will be making use of it. So aesthetic is also an important aspect to look in design. Another principle is sustainability. When we're talking about sustainability, as a designer, you have to think about the production methods, you think about the materials you'll be using in making the product, and most importantly, especially when you are dealing with a factory setting, or you are dealing with the mass production, the environment that you are in, the impacts of the environmental, that's the environmental impact, is very, very important, and an important aspect of the sustainability. How friendly it is. We release a lot of carbons in the environment. Is it safe for the environment, or what is the impact or the effect? This is something a designer needs to consider before making or designing his product. And lastly, there are actually wide range of principles that we can consider, but these are some of the key principles that we cannot do without, that we need to consider. The last one I have here is innovation. Yes, innovation. I repeat, innovation. When I say innovation, what do I mean? I know you understand what I'm trying to talk about here. If your design is out of date, you are in trouble, because technology is improving every day. There's an advancement and there's an emergence of trends every day. For example, if I should give somebody the Asian shoe that was discovered in Armenia 2008, based on the history that we have on our previous classes, I'm very sure somebody will insult me because of what? It's out of date. The trend has changed completely. Okay? So you have to look at you have to be innovative in your design. Now the trend is more, as I'm making this video now, the trend is more of either, if you are not using Louis Vuitton products or you are not using Bottega, that's for the young guys. It looks as though you are not wearing a shoe yet. Why? Because of the trends and the emergence of technology. There's other trend that is very trending, which has to do with Crocs. You can see variety of Crocs, though depending on the environmental impact as well. You look at that. That's when you wear a Croc, the environment either has to do with waterlogged environment. That's the purpose to serve, not for you to end up wearing something that will be drained by water. You see, that's an innovative design. I see Crocs as an innovative design. There are some of those companies like Yeezy, the Crocs itself, and others who have this very beautiful design. This is an innovation. So now, as a designer, you have to be innovative in your design. I have some instance here, like one of the shoe I posted. It's a casual shoe, but it's a normal casual shoe that everyone wear, especially when they call it Toms. But just a change of something on it, either the material or the color, and add something on top, it becomes an innovative design. And it might be one of the trends that you have because of what? The innovation. Another instance of innovation is the latest trending fashion now, that is the jean trousers. In those days, when you wear a fubu, they call it fubu because it was designed by fubu, a very big trouser that is very large, you wear it, you bounce on it. That was in the 90s. Now, it got to a point that when you wear fubu in that time, when the trend has passed, they will look at you as though this one is crazy, you don't know what it's doing. But now, fubu was also recreated rather, in an innovative manner by adding either some color, by either artists draw pictures on them, or they're losing it to have a crazy look, and now they call it what? They call it the boyfriend jeans, the girlfriend and boyfriend jeans. It's a trend. It's an old design that emanates again through what? Advent of technology and innovation. So they make the designer up to date. These are some of the key principles to consider when designing your product. What makes your product stand out is your innovative design that you add into it. Okay? Now, let's look at the design elements in footwear precisely. What are the design elements that we'll consider when making a footwear? That's a shoe. Number one element is the upper materials. Example of these upper materials is what? Is the leather, the synthetic material, the textile material, and either combination of any of them. When we talk about textile, we're not leaving it just just down, but instead we are talking about either fabric materials, denim materials, among other materials. So there are innovative designs that we make with such kind of material. When we talk about leather, we're referring to what people call skin. Leather is actually the name. That's the skin that has been chemically transformed through the process called tanning to provide what we call leather today. So leather is one of the best materials so far in the shoe making industry. Synthetic materials could be a wide range of synthetic materials. We can talk about polymerics, we can talk about the polymers. All of them are wide range. There are different kind of material that are made of synthetic. That is, even the Crocs that we'll talk about is also made of synthetic, but the kind of material that was used, which has to be either the EVA, which is mostly the Croc. Okay? Now, the second element that we'll look at is the last shape. Before you make your product, you consider the shape of the last that you are using as well. It could be an outdated last, so you have to work with the trends and the technology involved. And it could be a last, the shape, either if you want to make a square toe shoe, you will not go and take a round toe shoe last. Why? Because you needed a square toe. So you consider the last that you'll be using in make your product. And the last is simply the 3D shape of the foot, influencing the fit and the comfort. I have an example of a round shape last here, sneakers last, which I use. You can see this is just a simple round toe last. But if the last is pointed and I was supposed to make a round toe shoe, I'll have a pointed shoe. So I have to consider the shape before making my product. It's an important element. That's the last. Another one is the outsole and the midsole. Either the insole, rather, some call it insole or the midsole. It depends on what you are designing and how you're going to make it. The design is very, very important. So the element of the outsole here has to do with either the tread patterns, how the cushioning will be, how the support will be, is very, very key as well when making your design. And the next one is the closure system. When we say closure system, that is where the casual shoe falls in, the derby falls in, the Oxford, the boots, of different varieties, the loafers, which is most popularly known, the slip-ons, or the casual that has elastic, which could be the Van or the Chelsea boots. All of these are the closure system that we're referring to. It includes the buckles, the strap, the zippers, among others. So this is another element you have to look at. Now, number 5 elements I will talk about now is your color and texture. As a designer, you are designing and you are thinking about the color. You are thinking about the texture of the materials that you'll be using. Is it visual appealing? And what is the brand identity? It's very, very key. So the color of your materials and the texture of the material play an important role as well in your design elements. So next year, we're going to look at the next segment, which is the design process in footwear. What is the design process? I just mentioned the 5 elements here, which is the upper, the last shape, the outsole and midsole, the color system, and the closure system rather, and also color and texture. But now, what is the design process itself? Design process in footwear. If you don't get the design process, you might not get what you are looking for. So the design process here, the number 1 design process is research and development. That's one of the process in design in footwear. What is research and development? Research and development is an excellent way of investigating a subject in depth. That's the design in particular you want to work on. You think about the trends, finding new ideas which will work for you, and your research may throw ideas for color details, for even a name of your collection that you might have at that very time. So how do we get research and development? What makes up a research and development? One is what is inspiration, the inspiration you get. I have an image here that will describe little about inspiration. Anything that surrounds you could be an inspiration. Anything. The things that inspire you about life in general could be an inspiration. And that is one of the good starting point. Like this very photo here, you see a bird flying. It is the position of that flying bird that developed an inspiration for the designer who designed the airplane working hand in hand. You can see the similarities. There are varieties of designs that are being inspired by either animals or just a picture. Some people even get their inspiration from food. The food you are eating, you get your inspiration from it and you create a design out of it. So design could be very, very fast and interesting. And another one part of the research and development is your investigation. After you get the inspiration by any of those elements, you gather the information about the same theme that you saw. Then the emerged result of that inspiration will take you to the next stage. You investigate what is peculiar about it. Like I know of a guy or I've heard of this guy in Jos who designed a car, on the first car, sports car particularly. They named that car the Stano, Benny Stano. You can make a research on him either on Facebook and just see more about him. That's John. The design of that vehicle was inspired by a hare. That's a rabbit, this white rabbit. The shape and the rigidity, how fast a rabbit could be, those are the inspiration that triggers that design. And he designed the car with such shapes and design. So it is in footwear. We have different kind of inspiration. I can't go on and on to give you the details of this design. Where at school, we actually have to do such research before producing a product, where you have a team. The team will give you the design you are working on. From the design, you get your final design. You have either what we call range development. You can have like 6 to 7 different designs before getting your final design out of that thing that inspires you. So it could be anything that inspires you. You investigate and see the features about that design. And the next one is the process. The process is the use of which you have put your research in. What you put your research in is about the digesting the information you have collected. After collecting the design, you focus on the few main direction and the ideas that you have developed from it. It is basically the product development stage that you do this research. It's not in the production. The design stage, that's the product development stage, the design that you are doing. Mind you, you just don't make the design, but you make the design with the targeted customer in mind. Who is your customer? Either the age range of your customers. It will guide you to the kind of shoe you make or the product you design and give it out for sale. Example now, if I decided to, or I have some old men in my community who are my target customers, and I went ahead, started producing Bottega shoe to give it to them, or something of fashionable, just highly fashionable. You know that those age range of people don't focus mostly on fashion. Rather, they just focus on something that they wear and feel comfortable. So, me, either what I'm producing is out of the context, or perhaps if that is their own style, fine, I've gotten the design. But if it's not their own style, I'm only wasting my time. So you have your customer in mind when making such design. And the second process that we'll look at is the sketching and ideation. When we say sketching, most time the idea comes from the mind. So what do? You sketch it out. It must not be necessarily something beautiful. You just have an idea of what you want. That's why we call it sketching and ideation. You explore the concept, the shapes and the materials that you'll be using in the designing process. Then the next one is, after you make this design process, let's say you have the actual products or the picture of the product, you can go ahead into what we call the prototyping. That's you make the product to test run. It's not that you are making the final product. You are only testing to see if that product will meet your needs or it will not meet your need. So prototyping and testing, you create sample, test for the comfort, test for the performance, among other things. They are very, very important as well. So design plays a very, very important role in your shoemaking journey. In prototyping, you check for errors. If the performance is not okay, you know that you have to go ahead and redefine as well. Very, very important. Then the next one, which is the production or the manufacturing. The production or the manufacturing. In our definition of what design is, we're able to say the total specification of the products. When we say the product and we say it includes the word, it includes the upper, it includes the style, it includes the last, it includes the sole, includes the heels, the colors, the choice of material, and the method of construction. Now, before you start that production, method of construction is something I want to talk about from this production and manufacturing here. Method of construction differs according to the kind of shoe you are making. So that's the technology that you'll be using. What kind of technology will you use to produce the article? For example, sneakers and a cemented lasting machine. The technology you invite into is very, very important. I was saying, like now, I want to make a sneakers. I know that most sneakers are actually stitched. They don't have an insole. So you see, there is a difference between the cemented method and the method I want to imbibe into it. Example, the sneakers will use a strawberry method where they use string, or the string method rather, where they stitch it and pull it over the last before either melting the sole on it or using a separate sole and attach into it. While cemented method has to do with what? With tacks. I have to pull it over, use a tacks, rub adhesive, then gum it together at the bottom. You see, there's an insole in cemented method, but there's no insole in the string method. They are different technology. Even though I might be producing the same sneakers with different production. You see, you have to consider the method of construction. That is one of the aspects you look into. The technology you introduce into it is very, very important in your design. So all these things, just know that you have not started the product yet. It's the designing process. You already have an idea how the shoe will look like at the end, but it's not exactly what you are seeing yet. You have not seen it yet. You see, that is where design plays a vital role. That's why I gave an instance with the word, with the architect. Example is what? The architect have the flat land, but he will not start from the roof. He must pass through the process of the design, how the house will look like. You might see the picture of the house. It's beautiful, but it's not on the land yet. There's nothing there on the land. Why? Because that is the design, but the product is not there yet. So that's just how it is also in footwear. You have the picture of everything you use, so that when you start the production, you don't have to start thinking on how it will look like. Now, when we go into pattern cutting, there is a principle that you hear about the pattern cutter also, which will not bypass what the designer gave him. He must follow the principle of what the designer gave him to produce. So that is that about the design for today, but we'll also look into something very, very important, which is the foot anatomy. Before you carry out your design, you have to carry what we call the foot anatomy. That is where you check the kind of foot the person, the sizing system today. You hear size 40, somebody say, no, I don't wear 40, I wear 41. Somebody say, no, I wear 40, but the 40 should be big, all those things. So that is the foot anatomy. You take measurement of the foot, you understand the foot, how the foot works before you start your pattern production or your production. The foot, a research was taken on the foot before producing what we call the last. We talk about the shape. That's the shape of what we'll be designing. Now, this last was designed accordingly to the foot, the size of the foot, before making your product. I cannot use your foot and tag nails on it because blood will be gushing out at the end of the day. I'm sure you wouldn't even like it. The pains, you cannot stand the pressure. But we create lasts that will be able to fit in those sizes accordingly based on the research that was taken. All these are part of what? The design process. That is why you have the last today of different variety. You have the square toe last, you have the wooden last, you have even the steel last, which is mostly used in vulcanized method of construction. You see, where you melt the upper on the shoe. You cannot melt an upper on this last. Why? It can burn it. It's made of plastic. So you see the pressure or the heat could affect it. Instead, you use a steel last to make the product. So in your design process, you are thinking about the technology you'll be using. Is very, very key. So it's not just about diving into shoemaking, just start making shoemaking and shoes and sell, but it's understanding the trends behind it, what you are making, who is your customer, what are the elements that you'll be using in your designs. These are some questions you will ask yourself. And the trend, is it an existing trend or is it a trend that you have to innovate and produce something? I hope you have a wonderful session here. You have any question, you can ask your question in the comment section. For those of you who are in the paid class as well, let's meet in the group and discuss more on how this process is all about. I hope you have a very nice session. I'm your aspiring footwear professor, Peter Shalom. See you next time.